Hey guys, it's Libby. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to be doing the page 112 challenge tag award. So this is, I think, a tag that was going around a while ago, based on an award called Le Prix de Page 112, the award of page 112, which is a literary prize. And the first benchmark that the books have to pass is having a good page 112. If it has a good page 112, the judges then go on to read the rest of the book. I think they should just be reading page 112, but be that as it may. If you want to know more about this, I'll leave a link to an article from The Guardian that explains it pretty well in the description. Now, I heard about this a couple of weeks ago, and it inspired me to read a couple of random page 112s from my own unread books. One of them was Morris. I then went on to read all of Morris, and I loved it so much, and I'm so glad that I read page 112. So I thought that I would share some of that love with you. I've picked 5 books that I haven't read from my shelf, and I tried to pick ones that I haven't heard a lot about on BookTube, hoping to give you guys some exposure to something new. I did make sure that page 112 is in the first half of each book, so hopefully it won't get too spoilery. I will also leave timestamps in the description, so if I'm reading a book that you are interested in that you're really concerned about being spoiled for, you can just skip to the next one. And, you know, if I'm reading these and it turns out someone dies on page 112, then I guess I'll just cut that part and I will have to live in my own spoilerdom. I personally don't get that bothered by spoilers, but I do respect other people's desire to not be spoiled. So yeah, I'm just going to start reading these to you. At the end, I will rank them, and yes, I will be doing accents. The first page 112 I'm going to read is from How to Tell Toledo from the Night Sky by Lydia Netzer. This is a magical, realistic literary fiction. And I've decided I'm not going to stop and start in the middle of a sentence. I will pick up from the first full sentence, and I may continue on to page 113 a little bit if I need to finish a sentence. The people in the room nodded at each other. It was all right. She was going to be okay. Irene took a couple of deep breaths and looked up at the ceiling. Look at me, thought George. Look at me. I'm right here. I want you to look at me. You know, when I told my boyfriend I was going to create a black hole in my laboratory, he was like, wow, I hope you have a really excellent copper casing and a very accurate calibrator for your magnetic containment field. Boyfriend, thought George. But the word didn't really mean anything. She laughed nervously. The rest of the room was silent. No, actually, he didn't say that, but obviously, since the Earth and all matter didn't collapse into my workspace, I must have had the thing calibrated pretty well. Irene glanced around the room. It seemed like she was purposefully avoiding looking at George. The cherubs laughed, the naiads slapped their naked thighs, the gargoyles were pulling the petals out of the ornamental daisies on the stone decorations. She loves him not. Little did I know the attention my experiment would receive. I'm just so humbled and grateful to be here with all of you. Irene's eyes locked onto George's again, and he felt the sensation of being pulled underwater, feeling lighter, looser, more fish-like. I haven't been able to understand exactly why I was a scientist, said Irene to George, until now. Have I? Have I been able to? George nodded his head vigorously. He had not been listening to the words she was saying, but he felt sure any question she asked must be answered with yes. But I do now, she said. Thank you. Dr. Bryant stood up and began to applaud, gesturing to the audience to do the same. Okay, the next one is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I know that the TV show based on this is quite popular, but I haven't really heard anyone talking about the book. So this is historical fiction about Thomas Cromwell, who was something to Henry VIII. I don't know, Lord Chamberlain. So would the Bishop of London. You yourself, perhaps. True, true. More considers it. He chews his lip. And you'll say to me, well, it's not work for a lawyer, running after false translations, but I hope to get the means to proceed against the brothers for sedition, do you see? The brothers, he says, his little joke. He drips with disdain. If there is a crime against the state, our treaties come into play, and I can have them extradited. Have you found sedition in Tyndale's writing? Ah, Master Cromwell, Moore rubs his hands together. I relish you, I do indeed. Now I feel as a nutmeg must do when it's grated. A lesser man, a lesser lawyer, would say, I have read Tynedale's work, and I find no fault there. But Cromwell won't be tripped. He casts it back, asks me rather, have you read Tynedale? And I admit it. I have studied the man. I have picked apart his so-called translations, and I have done it letter by letter. I read him, of course I do, by license, from my bishop. It says in Ecclesiasticus, he that toucheth pitch shall be defiled, unless his name's Thomas More. Well, I knew you were a Bible reader, most apt, but if a priest hears a confession, and the matter be wanton, does that make the priest a wanton fellow himself? By way of diversion, Moore takes his hat off and absently folds it up in his hands. He creases it in two, his bright, tired eyes glance around, as if he might be confuted from all sides. And I believe the Cardinal of York has himself licensed his young divines at Cardinal College to read the secretary's pamphlets. Perhaps he includes you in his dispensations. Does he? It would be strange for him to include his lawyer, but then it's strange work for lawyers altogether. We have come around in a circle, he says. Moore beams at him. Well, after all, it's spring. We shall soon be dancing around the Maypole. Good weather for a sea voyage. You could take the chance to do some wool trade business, unless it's just men you're fleecing these days. And if the Cardinal asks you to go to Frankfurt, I suppose you'd go? Now, if you want some little monastery knocked down when he thinks it has good endowments, and when he thinks the monks are old, Lord bless them, and a little wandering in their wits, when he thinks the barns are full and the ponds are well stocked with fish, the cattle fat and the abbot old and lean, off you go, Thomas Cromwell. Next is Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. I'm not sure if this is a literary fantasy or if it's a literary fiction with magical realism. Maybe we'll find out. I'm actually not sure whether this is British or American. I think Helen Oyeyemi is British, so I'm gonna go for that. The dead don't trouble me. Dead is dead. It's the one who took impact and lived. Joe Pisano. Shrapnel put his left eye out and he refuses to wear an eye patch. A glass eye rolls silently in the crumpled hole left for it. Tom Franklin has no hands. Ivor Ross's right trouser leg is empty and half his mouth is puckered up for a sour perpetual kiss. And here I am, whole. It got so bad I had a pistol to my head there in my cozy study, and I wasn't at all sure I'd taken it out of the desk drawer myself. I must have been holding it, but there was no feeling in my fingers. The gun seemed to be floating, held up by Joe's ill will, Tom's and Ivor's. The gun's nozzle pushed at my skin as if trying to find the correct part of my skull to nestle against, death like the insect menacing the tree. "Shh," said Mary Fox. She reached over my shoulder, prized my fingers loose one by one, and took the gun. Then she stuck a pipe in my mouth. I watched tobacco trickle into the bowl. I watched her hand tamping the tobacco down. And the pipe moved between my clenched teeth. Tap and pour, tap and pour. She lit a match, and I watched the flame circle the bowl once, twice, 3 times, before it took and a mist rose. "I know you think you're going mad," she said, "but you're not. Don't be perverse. Celebrate." She poured some scotch from the decanter on my windowsill and pushed the glass towards me. Between that and the pipe, my sense of perspective began to return. Next, we have the Rabbit-Back Literature Society by Pasi Ilmari Jaskalainen. This is translated from the Finnish by Lola M. Rogers. And it is a mystery thriller, I think. Oh, we're starting a new chapter. Chapter 13, Ingrid Katz Spills. I'm not going to be doing a Finnish accent. Ella stopped her and asked what she meant by spill. Ingrid's mouth smiled. "It's one of the game's more recent terms. You draw it out and I spill it. I spill, I spilled, I am spilling. At some point, we wanted to distinguish between playing the game and telling stories, because storytelling is an art, but the game is something else entirely. You see, the game doesn't produce stories. It produces material for stories. That happens when you break open the stories and let their unformed essence spill out. That's what the game is for. Everybody has valuable material inside them that the game can help to draw out. Even with her eyes covered, Ingrid Cat seemed to sense Ella's confusion. I suppose it sounds a little tasteless, Ingrid said apologetically. I may have been the one who suggested the term. You won't find it in the rulebook. I was thinking about collecting sap from trees. It seemed like a beautiful idea in a way, to go to the woods and make a little hole in a tree and come away with something valuable without doing any damage. Arnie C. was very enthusiastic about the term, but she has her own ideas about it now. She suggested we call the game Nosferatu, but I let it be known that I would quit the society the second such a name was adopted. And on to the last one. This is The Half-Made World by Felix Gilman. This is a sci-fi western. Okay, so this page 112 is actually at the end of a chapter, so it will be quite short. Since it is so short, I will start in the middle of a sentence. We'll see where this goes. Wasn't able to understand why he had to answer questions or show his papers. And anyway, Liv thought, the linesman instinctively disliked him, huge and defective as he was. If it weren't for the noise and her nerves, she wouldn't have let him out of her sight. Liv threw her weight against the slow revolving doors. She called out, "Wait, stop! Please wait!" just as Magfrid swung his fist and knocked a linesman flying. And suddenly, whistles were blowing and more black uniformed men came running. Dozens more. Okay, so that's the 5. What did I think of them? So, How to Tell Toledo from the Night Sky was either the best or the worst. I read it injecting some sort of irony into the whole situation, and if that's merited, then I think it's really good. But if this was meant to be read straight, it's kind of eh. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt though, and we'll say this is my number 1. Mr. Fox, I think, was technically well written, but page 112 didn't intrigue me that much and make me want to read the rest of the book, which I think is what we are actually supposed to be judging it on. Same thing with Rabbitback Literature Society. This one intrigues me a little bit more than Mr. Fox, but I'm still not like, oh my god, this book is amazing, I have to read all of this, like I was with Morris. These things are all really being compared against the page 112 of Morris. Now it's a little bit unfair to The Half-Made World since there was so little to go on. I think I am going to put this at the bottom of the pile though. There was like action going on, but it totally failed to interest me in the stakes of this action. And on a sentence level, it was merely acceptable. And so I think that means Wolf Hall gets to be number 2. I thought it was well written on a sentence level. There was a lot of dialogue, so that actually may have been confusing for you guys if you don't know who was talking. It was a conversation between 2 men, I think Cromwell and Moore. So I'm gonna rank them: How to Tell Toledo from the Night Sky, Wolf Hall, Rabbitback Literature Society, Mr. Fox, then The Half-Made World, but possibly also that. Okay guys, I hope you found this interesting. I'm not going to tag anyone because I do not want to be responsible for causing someone else to be spoiled, but if you do want to do this, more power to you. And if you've already made a video, drop a link to it in the description. I'd love to check it out. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you later.